Our next section is on workplace violence. As you guys know, this is a California Senate Bill 553. It's right now it's California only, but rumor has it that it's going to be nationwide pretty soon, right? So California, as you guys know, always sets the bar high, always the first to do everything, okay? So let's be proud about that, right? We're the first to do this, right? But yeah, exactly. But this standard has been around a long time for medical facilities, for nursing, right? They deal with violence all the time. But now they're requiring every single industry to have a program, okay? This is in light of all the shootings, right? Active shooters we had. The last crazy one I heard was someone came in for an interview, didn't feel right, went outside, got a gun, came back.
Oh.
Right? Interview. They were not an employee yet.
Now that I passed the interview?
Exactly, right? So there's so many threats out there, there's so many craziness out there. Just in Irvine, like 2 weeks ago, a friend shot a friend because of some dispute, a UPS driver or something like that, right?
Oh.
It was crazy, right?
Yeah.
So right now, it's just the mental illness is really high. People don't think about things anymore. They're very emotional, very reactive, and that's why we have to be prepared. So that's why they have this program here to give us guidelines on how to prepare for it, okay, and how to train our employees and how to communicate to our staff as well if there should there be an event that requires an emergency. It's effective July 1st, so this training here will be good for everybody here, but we have to make sure every single employee goes through this training by July 1st, okay? So I'm gonna walk you guys through it. So the definition of workplace violence is any act or threat of violence, harassment, intimidation, or other threatening, disruptive behavior that can occur on the job. It does not include lawful acts of self-defense or defense of others, right? So if you're acting to help somebody and you become violent yourself, it does not apply, right? Because it's self-defense, it's different. It's only when you're an aggressor, right? That falls under workplace violence, okay? So here at AFI, violence of any type is not tolerated at work, right? That's the standard, that is our stance. And then OSHA has defined 4 types of violence. So typically in the past, violent is violent, right? But now they have 4 different types of violence, okay? Anybody guess what the different types can be?
Can't wait to hear it.
Verbal,
Verbal,
physical,
physical,
mental,
emotional,
yeah.
all great stuff, right? The reason that we want to cover this in detail is when you are reporting it, because another requirement of this program here is we have to keep a workplace violence log. So when you're reporting potential violence or active violence, you have to categorize it, type 1, type 2, type 3, or type 4. And by categorizing it, it goes to the right department to handle, right? So for example, type 3 will only go to HR because it's confidential, right? And I'll explain to you guys in a bit. So it really depends on what you select, it goes to the right department, okay? But some of this information can and will be confidential. So type 1. Type 1 is violence committed by a person who has no legitimate business at the site or at your workplace, okay? So type 1 right now is the biggest one that's trending as we're rolling this out, right, to our clients and our surveys. But type 1 deals with homelessness. You go to a job site, you're surprised to see them, that's type 1, right? So when you go to work and you encounter somebody that you did not expect to see that day, or did not expect to see at all, right, going to work, right? That's type 1. So homelessness, someone trying to steal your tools, someone breaking into your car, right? That's all type 1. For the office here, let's say in wintertime, when you walk into the car, and you see a random person just walking around there outside, you feel unsafe going to your car, that's type 1, because they're not supposed to be there, okay? So when you report that, you select type 1, right? Type 1 shows us that it's somebody that is not supposed to be there, okay? Type 2 is someone that we expect to see at our workplace, but is not necessarily our employee. So for us, at a job site, it would be other subcontractors, GCs, vendors, suppliers, delivery person, right? We expect to see them there, right? But they're not our employee, right? So if they're threatening to us because we blocked their car or whatever it is, they're like yelling at you report it as a type 2, okay? So that's type 2 is someone that we expect to see, but it's not an employee. And type 3 is what we're used to, right? That is our employees, right? If you have an issue with past, present employees, you report it as type 3, that goes to HR and HR's eyes only, right? So it's not going anywhere else. HR will look through this information and they will send out enough information for the management team to address it without breaching the confidentiality, okay? So that's type 3. So type 4 is someone who has a relationship with one of your employees that's threatening. Right?
Who's got some crazy girlfriends?
Exactly, right? So that's exactly the examples they provided, right? So you got someone. someone going through a like a nasty breakup, right? Someone going through a nasty breakup tells you, hey, I'm going through a nasty divorce. My husband or my wife's starting to come to work and harm me. And you're working right next to that person, you might be like, hey, I don't want to work next to you. If that's the case, support it. Type 4, get out of here, right?
Yeah.
And if you're in the city, the biggest type 4 exposure, take a guess. If you're working in San Francisco or any big urban cities. Type 4, what do you think is the biggest one? Biggest reason for type 4? Gang affiliations.
Oh.
You got somebody with gang tattoos working in the wrong environment, they're gonna attract the wrong people. Right. And if you're standing right next to them, right, you might get involved, right? So that's a big one, right? So they can report that, hey, I'm working with a person who belongs to this, and working in an environment that is the territory of this, and I don't feel safe, right? That's type 4, right? So we see a lot of that in San Francisco where they're starting to mention that, right? That they don't feel comfortable working with somebody who's affiliated, right? Because of the environment, right? So that's some examples of what type 4 is, okay? So as you guys know, now you guys know the 4 different types. When you report it, it takes practice, but we're screening them, and we'll coach you guys through it. But that is a quick demo for you, everybody. So next one here is behavioral indicators, right? So while workplace violence may occur without warning, there is often a pattern of escalation, right, from the incidents, right? So if we identify the escalation, we can get ahead of it, right? So I'm going to give you guys some areas here. So level 1, the early warning signs. A person is being intimidating or bullying, is curious, disrespectful, uncooperative, verbally abusive. This is describing Bob.
I'm the victim.
Wait a minute, I've seen the criminal lines.
You're the victim.
Yeah, I've seen those criminal lines.
So this is like the early warning signs, right? If you're experiencing this, don't just say, oh, that person's having a bad day, right? Look at it as an early sign, right? Mention it right away so that we could get involved, right? We don't want, to have it escalate, because once you let it go out of hand or let it happen once, it's gonna happen again and again and again, right? So make sure that if this is happening to anybody within our team, and we see it, make sure we say something and we address it right away before it escalates. Because if we don't, it's gonna escalate. And when it escalates, it becomes arguing, right? You can argue with a customer, vendors, coworkers, or management. When you start to argue, it's escalation, okay? Refusing to obey company policies and procedures. You want us to do what now? I'm not gonna do that. You can't make me do that, right?
It's escalating quickly.
Yeah,
It's quick.
Yep.
Sabotage.
Right. So that is that's escalation. And sabotaging equipment, stealing company property, that is like resentment, right? That's escalation too, right? So that is definitely signs that we have to intervene. Verbalizing or wish to hurt a coworker or management, right? That is a scary one nowadays, right? You may hear that. It's not a joke anymore. We don't joke about that nowadays. If you hear that, you gotta take that seriously. Or sending threatening notes to coworkers or management, right? That is one too. It could be emojis, whatever it is. If you interpret it as threatening, you gotta report it, okay? And then seeing themselves as victimized by management. That is a good indicator too, right? Oh, they're doing this to me, they're unfair to me, they're this to me. That means they are brewing in their head. They can have nasty thoughts, and they're gonna, it's gonna get into their subconsciousness, and it could become an issue, right? So this is our signs, right? Level 1, this is level 2. As it escalates, you definitely want to watch for these signs. Level 3 is when a person is exhibiting or engaged in suicidal threats, physical fights, destruction of property, extreme rage that is possibly disproportionate to the situation, using weapons with the intent to harm themselves or others. Okay, so this is where it becomes an emergency, right? If you see somebody like this, that means they have nothing to lose, right? If they have suicidal threats, that means, hey, I'm giving up, right? So if I don't like you, I'm gonna do something about it, right? So definitely you want to be careful. In real life situation, right? We hear about it all the time. If someone's going through a bad divorce, and they're telling you, hey, I've lost everything, I'm depressed, but it should be alarming, right? It should be signs to you to say, hey, I'm gonna report this anonymously so that the company knows what's going on, right? And we know about it, we can say, we can provide support and help to that person and kind of get their mindset, see what's going on with their life. Because if they're going through that, experience, all it takes is one person to trigger them, and that person will be the blunt of all their frustration and anger, right? So we want to be extremely careful. If you hear it, you see it, you know about it, let us know. so that we can intervene and we can provide the right resources, right? And physical fights is one, right? We see that a lot, especially out in the construction site. They get into fights all the time, right? They argue, they say meet them in the parking lot, things like that.
Yeah.
We hear something like that, we see something like that, we gotta intervene, right? Because that means there's some hidden issue of anger there that we have to address. And then the rest is pretty common sense. Destruction of property, extreme rage, right? Again, those are clear signs that mental health is not all there, right? Something is affecting them, right? It doesn't mean that they're a crazy person. It just means they're going through something in their life or their personal issues that are affecting their mental health, right? We all have stressful days. We all have bad days, bad spells, and things like that. And it does, resonate out, from our actions. So therefore, if we catch it ahead and we talk to them, maybe we pull them back a little bit and give them a sense of reasoning, okay? So all that in play, we have to develop a workplace violence program. And our workplace violence program consists of a written prevention plan, a violent incident reporting system, job-specific workplace violence hazards and controls, a violent incident log, and then an opportunity for employees to ask questions, okay? So how do we address them? The plan, we have it will be launched and loaded onto the app. It'll be there for anybody to review and read. The incident log, I'm going to walk you guys through it. It's a way for you to report things, right? You can do it anonymous. You can put your name, up to you. The site-specific workplace is the survey that we did. We are going to continue to do the surveys once in a while to get an idea of what our workforce feel is unsafe or a threat, so that we can address it and then we can have controls behind it once we identify what is the threat, okay? So you guys probably all participate in the survey that went out, so we'll continue to do those surveys so we can gauge the workforce to see what areas of concerns there are, okay? We gauge other companies, and like I said, homelessness and tools being stolen is the biggest one, right? The biggest threat, okay? And for companies that work for HOAs, right? HOA business is booming right now. Their biggest one is tenants, right? Type 2, right? Because when you go to an HOA environment, you expect to see tenants there. And when you are painting or doing demo stucco work on the exterior of the wall and they don't get your note about moving their cars, you have to tow it. Can you imagine towing a tenant's car and they're late for work that morning? Ooh. It could get pretty ugly, right? That was the biggest concern, right? So what we've done, just to give you an example of how we can work through these, instead of towing it to the yard now, the company tows it to, a couple stalls down the line. So when they're out there, they're yelling, screaming, upset that the car's towed, you're like, hey, you didn't see a memo? We just moved it over there. We have to work. They're like, oh, I'm so sorry. It de-escalate the whole situation right away. My bad, I'm sorry. They go to their car, they apologize, it never happened again. They always park away, right? But if you imagine if you say, hey, you gotta go and pay, you get your car out of the pound and you're late for work, whatever, it's gonna be bad, right? It could turn violent pretty quick, right? So how we de-escalate it and how we, have programs and procedures to deal with it is up to us, right? Based on the surveys that we get back and the exposures and the reports that we get back from the workforce. Then the violent incident log, so once it's reported, it goes to HR, it goes to the safety team, and then our job and responsibility is to come up with controls, right? So we have to review each one and say, okay, is this something we can address? What do we need to do about this, right? And then we document it under the log, right? So these are something that OSHA will always look for, right? Because they know that documentation is always the weakness for every single company. So the first thing they're gonna ask you is, let me see the log. If you show them a blank log, they're like, okay, here's a citation, right? But if you show them, hey, I got a system, right, to capture it, and these are the records I captured, and we have a system to address it and follow up on it in the log, here you go, right? Once we show them how we do that, they're fine with it, okay? And then of course, employee questions, right? They could go through the portal, they go through you're calling their supervisors directly, however it is, but they can report in any concerns they may have, okay? So in your new portal now, you have this new tab, the orange one, workplace violence incident log. If you open it up, you get this form here, right? This kind of shows you and everybody else out there as we're doing the training, the very minimum, they have to know how to get to this tab here, okay? Because they need to know how to report any concerns they may have. They don't have to put their name if they don't want to. I'm gonna put another title here that says it could be submitted anonymously so they know. But we just want the information, right? So as they go through it, they could select what type it is, they could give us information. Most importantly, they need to tell us what they were doing at the time that it happened, right? Because is it part of the job or were they like doing something else that's not part of the job when it happened? We need to know that because it helps us identify the controls, right? If they're on break and they happen to break in the wrong area, nothing much we can do other than tell them don't break that area, right? But if they are doing their job and they're up in the in the area spraying and they're making the subcontractor upset because they're dirtying up their workplace underneath and it becomes a continuous fight all the time, that's something we need to address through procedures and policy changes, right? Working with the GC and things like that to de-escalate that, right? Because there's always going to be that conflict between the two subs, right? So what they're doing at the time is really important for us to help us understand how we can control it. So reducing the risk, right? So this is how we reduce the risk. Inspection and corrections, right? We have to do a lot of inspections, and then when we do inspection and we see issues, right, we have to correct them, right? So this is going to be a part of our daily, weekly inspections going forward, right? We have a section on workplace violence. We're going to walk through, we're going to identify things as potential type 1, type 2, type 3, and type 4, right? So we'll continue to do that. So if you go back to the example of spraying, if we are spraying and we're not properly quarantining the areas, right? We might write up as a safety opportunity, but we also might write up as a workplace violence potential too, right? Because other trades might be upset, might be angry, might confront our guys, and next thing you know, they're two heated people talking, things happen, right? So we're going to start to monitor that, record that in our reports, so that if we were ever audited, it shows that we are looking at it. Okay? Zero tolerance. So this has to come from the top down. We have to have a zero tolerance policy, right? It has to be. That's it, right? If you are threatening to bring in a weapon or threaten violence, there's no way out from that, right? There's no comeback from that. It's got to be zero tolerance, right? We don't want the workforce to think like, hey, I'm just having a bad day. It's not like explaining to them I was having a bad day, things will be fine. I'm the biggest producer here, right? No, zero tolerance is zero tolerance, right? So are your biggest producer, you need to pull them aside and say, you got to make sure you guys don't slip because it's zero tolerance policy. I can't help you if you do slip, but get your tempers in control and don't say things that you don't mean, right? Know the emergency response procedures and shelter-in-place locations. So we're going to talk about our push notification system. So we're required to have a system. If they have emergency, we can push it out to our staff so they know what's going on. Okay. We could use that for other things as well, for like high heat, things like that. It will be a good way to communicate to every single staff member at one touch of a button. Okay. The reason I require this is, for example, if there's an active shooter here, right? Knock on wood, right? If there's an active shooter here, you want to be able to push a notification. Everybody says avoid the office, right? You don't want everybody to come to the office and say what's going on, what's going on, what's going on, or you got an issue going on in the office, right? So that push notification is extremely important, especially if you're like working in cities where they have shelter in place, right? They might send out an alert, hey, San Jose is under shelter in place right now, there's something going on. Our guy's not gonna know about it, so we need to push out to our San Jose guys, say, hey, there's a shelter in place order in your area, follow it, right? To hear other announcement from us, right? So it definitely helps push the emergency notification to everybody. Right? So that's what we have. And then last but not least, take every single threat seriously and involve local law enforcement as early as possible to make sure that it gets squashed. Okay? Any questions on workplace violence? We are right on schedule. Look at that. All right.